Hi class, my name is Jessica Voles and this is the video recap of my research on the media and its coverage of Bonnie and Clyde. We've been asked to focus on three things: how the media covered the pair, how the coverage directly affected the event or their deaths, and how those events affected sociocultural norms and journalistic reporting in the US. Let's get right to it. First, let's talk about how the media covered or framed it. I think it's pretty safe to say that many of us never knew about Bonnie and Clyde or vice versa. The two were consistently referred to as a pair, and I believe that is the foundation for how the media covered them. And so not only were they a pair, they were portrayed as a romantic pair. Very small but consistent details help paint the picture, and you see that in several ways throughout the coverage. For example, when the New York Times says Bonnie was only 19 when she met old Clyde, Clyde was often referred to as a famous gangster, and Bonnie was painted as a young woman who followed along through all the troubles and heartache because she loved him. We also hear about how the two grew up in poor families, but they seem to have found love in each other. The media painted them as a fearless and rough around the edges, but soft for each other kind of couple. Examples of this are when we hear the author of an article emphasize that Bonnie would be Clyde's gun woman and often has cigarettes in her mouth. The two also reported killing 13 officers during their 2-year crime spree, which made it seem as though they weren't really afraid of anything. Sometimes that had never been on the cover, nevertheless done before, which brings me to my next point: how coverage affected the way their death unfolded. When reading about the death of Bonnie and Clyde, I noticed that the New York Times painted it as a gruesome attack, using words like ambush, and they walked into a carefully laid trap that was set up by the Texas police because they weren't taking any more chances on the two, since they knew how dangerous they were. They also consistently emphasized the number of bullets used to kill Bonnie and Clyde, which says that officers riddled them and the deadly bullets hailed them. Even the verbiage when you hear that the officers poured bullets into them, a more brutal attack, that was painted. The ending was a dramatic one to a story that the public continued to follow simply because they loved the way it was unfolding, especially given the time, because it was during the Great Depression era, when many people were rebelling against the norm and basically putting a hand to the faces of big institutions that just failed people economically. That's also why Clyde's role as a gangster was so significant, especially having this fearless woman by his side. I think it's clear that the answer is yes, the media did affect their death because of how the crime spree had been covered and followed by people, which may have also been the reason their deaths were so gruesome. The officers involved in their slaying wouldn't risk letting them strike again or letting their power continue. Two young romantic lovers on a thrill-seeking ride obviously shouldn't have been able to make away like it did, and no one is supposed to feel they're unstoppable to authorities. And so the officers were not only in it till the end, but to prove themselves and to show people that their behavior would not be tolerated. To sum all that up, I think the media directly affected the death of Bonnie and Clyde by covering their crime spree in a way that people wanted to follow along. And the police knew that, so they were paying very close attention. And that these people were as dangerous as they were based on previous coverage of their spree. They did whatever they had to do to put an end to it. So now we ask how the event affected sociocultural norms and the way journalistic reporting is done. Well, first, we hear Bonnie and Clyde used now in a way that describes your partner in crime. Beyonce and Jay-Z, two of the biggest names in entertainment, refer to each other as that. So Bonnie and Clyde are still now being painted in this almost glamorous romantic light that the papers often made them out to be. Photos of them were released that showed them while still on their 2-year spree, smiling and enjoying others' company, even laughing romantically. Sometimes that's pretty much what we picture when we hear Bonnie and Clyde nowadays. The most significant way it changed journalism, though, is that it really changed the art of storytelling and how covering crime in America, it showed that people are fascinated and sensationalized with the do the job as it comes of capturing an audience. I believe that because people are so sensationalized and it had every element of romance, thrill, and even ended with a bang, literally, it was able to capture so many people. And it continues to memorize so many, and even still today. I think that's why in any storytelling case, now we as journalists are taught to find those elements that will hook an audience and paint our characters with such context to fill in the blanks. We do that in ways that journalists did when Bonnie and Clyde, for example, getting interviews with Clyde's neighbors after his death in hope of any information at all that would help the audience better understand why Clyde may have done these things that he did. We do that now to try to get those sources that give insight on any criminal in any case that we cover. The story of Bonnie and Clyde could be analyzed without end. But since I'm hitting way over the 3-minute mark, I hope I was able to answer the questions you might have surrounding the way their story was covered and the lasting impact that it has had. Thanks for watching.